pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is Sue here to do the roll call?
Yep.
If you would be so kind, so
Mary Ann Rosa,
here.
Jonathan Ramsey,
Here.
Ken Demers,
Here.
Robert DeSina,
Here.
Jeffrey Desveras,
Here.
Anthony DeBona,
Here.
Louis Raza,
Here.
Robert Ritalik,
Here.
and Rachel Ryan.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from the Finance Subcommittee meeting dated March 15th, 2021.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Rachel. Any corrections to the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposing?
I abstain.
I abstain.
I do as well.
All right, we have three abstentions, Mr. Ritalik, Mr. Raza, and Mr. DeBona. All those in, oh, we did that already, okay. We now need a motion under new business, please.
I move to accept the donation of a Harley-Davidson Road King police motorcycle for the Watertown Police Department. The donation of the motorcycle will be made by Theraplant LLC for the value of $16,117. An emergency lights, sirens, and graphics, helmets, and microphone to be donated by the Hometown Foundation of Cheshire, Connecticut for a value of $9,768.85.
Do we have a motion to accept the gift and donation?
Second.
And are there any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I move to authorize an appropriation in the amount of $25,885.85 from the general fund for the purchase of a motorcycle, equipment, and uniforms for the Watertown Police Department. The general fund will be reimbursed through donations from Theraplant LLC and Hometown Foundation of Cheshire, Connecticut.
Is there a second?
Second.
We accepted the donation, now we're making the purchase, and we will be receiving the reimbursement. Are there any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Okay. Item is a review and discussion of the town manager's proposed budget. Let's start with the various departments, and are there any comments, suggestions, requests, questions that council members have? Let's start with, we have the town council, the town manager's budget. At the beginning of your budget book is the list of all those small departments. Does anyone have any questions with regard to any of those departments? Any comments? So we're talking economic development, finance, administration, treasurer, tax collector, assessor, town clerk, elections, planning and zoning, zoning board of appeals, conservation, historic, public buildings, and building inspections.
Mary Ann, may I ask a question?
Certainly.
I know we talked about this before, but I'm just wondering if Mr. Ramo can give us an explanation again about the intern. 50120. It's a $20,100.
On what page are you, Rachel?
I'm on the town manager page.
Can you speak to that, Mark?
Yes, I can, Madam Chairwoman. So basically, we're looking for that $20,100, which would go towards an internship that is through, I'm sorry, UConn. That money would be used to bring in a student who is going for their MPP to identify grant opportunities. We've also looked at programs that would allow us to develop a human resource department. Also, we would use them to possibly identify and match grants with nonprofit organizations in our town. So it's something that we've done in the past. This is kind of a step forward in increasing that role and utilizing something that a school, it would be beneficial to us as well as the school.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions on any of those? We'll move down to the fire department. Do you have any questions or comments anyone wants to make? Suggestions?
I'm sure I have a
Yes.
question about the fire department. When we were talking about the ladder truck that they need for the future,
Right.
I believe it was the chief who mentioned the two buildings or the two areas, or the Ivy, the new building, and Taft. I was wondering about the Seaman building. And there was another building that came to mind. Not thinking about it, but just wondering if those are really the only two buildings that would require a ladder truck.
The chief is here, maybe he'd be, chief, could you answer that?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, we use ladder trucks on every structure fire that we go to, no matter where it is. If we have to get on the roof of a single family home, we have to get a ladder truck up there just to keep members safe and escape in case the fire gets into the roof area and they have to get out in a hurry. The ladders, like I said, are our biggest thing for, and the Seaman Company is one of the places we would need it for if we had a big fire up in the cocklofts and all the apartments that are up there, because that is pretty much all offices now. We're used to be a manufacturing place, so it's definitely needed there at Seaman Company.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I have a question. Madam
Sure, Jeff.
Under item 50333 medical services.
What page are you on?
This is on page 28. There was a very low amount of actual expenditures in 2019, 2020. Jumped up to about 19,000 for the revised budget and 22,000 for the 1 year estimate. The recommendation is now at 10. Is there a reason why it's been reduced? Particular difference between the 2 years?
You're on mute.
You're muted, chief.
Is that question for Mark?
No,
This
but
one.
chief.
Either one.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Did you hear the
Yes.
question?
Medical services for our physical, annual physicals for our firefighters. And what happened with COVID last year, we couldn't do the physicals. So we had money left over from last year's account to use this year. So that's why it was reduced to 10,000 from this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
COVID.
Anyone else? No? Okay, we'll move on to the police department.
I do have a question.
Sure, just tell us the page around.
Sure, it's on page 32. It's
Okay.
under maintenance agreements. Now I saw on the presentations, there was an offset from IT upgrades that were done, so something dropped off, and then there was an offset by maintenance agreements on the IT equipment. Is it the difference between what was in previous years, and the new proposed amount is pretty large, it's around $60,000. I just wanted to know what accounts for that much of a difference in terms of that part of the budget.
Is the chief there?
Oh, there he is.
He's
Yeah.
there, yeah.
I don't see him.
He's there.
Am I here?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect. Good evening. Yes, I believe you're speaking about account 332-019 maintenance agreements.
That's correct, yeah.
We are looking at, let me locate it. All right, the majority of that increase includes a $41,000 allocation for IT consulting work, where we would have an outside vendor do a lot of the maintenance and upkeep on our IT system. As you know, we put in a significant amount of money into our IT infrastructure this year, including all new servers and firewalls and 911 recorders, as well as some other appliances. In consultation with the town manager, we felt it would be most beneficial, given the limited resources of the town's IT department, to have an outside vendor handle the majority of the maintenance work on our IT system. That's roughly $1,000 per week at 41 weeks. That's budgeted.
Who is the vendor?
Well, we're currently using a vendor called SMC. I believe it's SMC out of Middlebury.
SNC, the N is in November or M is in Mike?
S is in S Sam M Mary C Charlie.
Maybe I could get some clarification. Mr. Ramo, do you happen to know off the top of your head how many hours the IT people have a week? I know it's very limited.
I believe they're under the contractual 35 hours per week, and our part-time employee, I'm not 100% sure, but Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, is 28 hours per week or 25?
He is 25 hours a week.
Okay.
And he's been designated to the police department for the time being.
Which, because of all the remote meetings going on in the town, that really straps that IT department quite a bit. So
Yes.
I think it helps justify what the chief is asking for.
And Chief, also in that same line item, was there also another $11,000 related to the Office 365 transitioning to that?
That's correct. There's several other new items that got put into that line item. We've had several new pieces of equipment purchased this year. Email was probably one of the larger continuing costs that will be involved there. We used to serve email on our own server at the police department. We have migrated over to Office 365, which is a software as a service that will be a continuing cost. It'll be hosted on the web rather than on our own machine at the police department.
Just to follow up on SMC, when you said there's 41 weeks remaining on that contract with them?
We budgeted for 41 weeks of the year. It's roughly $1,000 for an 8-hour day for their services. We figured 41 weeks would be an appropriate number to budget their time.
And for after that period of time, we have to reevaluate either working with them specifically or this process or the cost involved.
So this, the majority of our network is going to be brand new, and it's going to be built to best practices. And it's not going to require attention every single week. So we can skip weeks and have the service come in, and a lot of this work will be done remote as well to perform, bi-weekly maintenance on on our infrastructure, as well as actually do more other projects within the building. We figure budgeting about 41 weeks would be appropriate.
And when do they begin doing it? When did they start?
If our budget holds, they would be starting in July when the budget goes into effect.
They haven't started yet. It's will happen once the budget goes through. Okay,
That's correct.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes, Rachel.
Chief, this is just a question about the rifles you mentioned in the meeting.
Yes.
That you might lose them because of the police accountability bill. I wrote down $7,600. I think that's the total. That's not for one rifle, right? That's the total for all the rifles you would purchase?
I believe that would be a total for all the rifles. I'm looking to, do you have the account in front of you, what account number that is?
It's on, I wrote these notes on page 34.
It might be 50572 on page 35. Possibly.
Josh, it's 50460, page
yeah.
34.
Special supplies.
Okay.
Is that 020, Sue?
I'm sorry, page 34, 50460. Yes, in 20.
Five oh four six oh.
Special police and fire supplies.
Yep.
Okay.
So could I just ask, since this is not an area of great knowledge for me?
Yep, go ahead.
How would the, how does the police department use a rifle? When might you need to use a rifle?
Rifles are used basically for long range perimeter control. We use them on entries into a home. They're a much better weapon than using let's say a shotgun, where there's going to be a lot more collateral damage. Rifle is one single smaller bullet, generally will not penetrate through walls, and will stop before it will go too far and cause other collateral damage in case we don't hit the target. It's far more accurate than a shotgun or a handgun, and it has a lot more stopping power in a single bullet than a handgun or a shotgun. So they're a very useful, versatile weapon.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, that also includes the animal control and communications too. No one has any questions there? Okay, we're on to public works. We're quiet tonight, folks. No questions. Public works.
I have a question just dealing with it's on page 42, line item 50110 for the assistant superintendent, which would have been a new position this current year. Mark or anyone that's on, would you be able to just explain why that position was added to the budget?
Mark, you want to take that or you want me to take that?
How about if I do it, Bob, and if you feel you need to chime in, you go ahead and do that.
Go ahead.
So basically what we were looking for, we were looking at the highway department for succession transitional efforts. So as we move forward, most of the leadership in the highway department is getting ready or nearing their time of considering retirement. So before the public works director left, we had talked about bringing up somebody from a foreman level to an assistant superintendent level, which would allow us to bring in a younger person from lower in the ranks so that they could start to take part in leadership decision-making. I fully support the idea. I understand that at this point, budgetary constraints may hold us back from doing that. But I think moving forward, we should start looking at our proper succession training so that when these people do decide to retire, we're not left with a gap in our supervision and leadership.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Jeff.
On the Public Works Director, which obviously we do not have a Public Works Director in place right now, we're obviously allocated. We have to have pay set aside for when that position is filled. Do we know where we are on that process right now?
I'm sorry, there was a lot of muffled. I didn't get the whole question.
It's the mask, filling the mask. It's not my mumbling. What I'm asking about is for the Public Works Director position for the, we have an allocation for $125,279, and currently there's nobody in that position. I wanted to just know where we were in terms of filling that vacancy.
So basically, we brought in an engineering firm that's going to evaluate the whole department. We're in the process in determining where all our projects are, where our grant funding is. We're ensuring that we're maintaining the minimum amount of effort to keep those funds coming to us. At this point, we're re-looking at the job description for the position. We're working in conjunction with this engineering firm as we move forward. The monies that are already in that line item are going to be used for the payouts from the retiring Public Works Director. So there probably won't be any funds left over from that line item when we're done paying for that payout.
So then, I presume then, given that, it may be some time, if the decision is to go forward with having a Public Works Director and there isn't some kind of change, that it would be some time before that position is filled, given the fiscal constraints here.
No. The money that he's talking about being drawn is in the current budget.
Okay, I'm
The money you're looking at
I'm
would,
talking about the proposal
yeah, well,
for next year.
you can't hire somebody if you don't have any money in the line item.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question completely?
Yeah, you did. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Anybody else? Recreation is the next budget. Are there any questions there? Is Lisa here?
I'm here.
Are we going to have the same amount of activities in this budget as we had this past COVID year, or we didn't have COVID, i.e. the downtown merchants things and all the programs you ran for young people?
Right, we're planning on starting up again in the summer as soon as the governor lifts some of the restrictions. So it would be for this proposed fiscal year, and last year we had to cancel so many things. So we've been working with the Board of Ed to start up the summer camps again. And as far as like a block party, we're looking at just August, because that's when it looks like things are going to really start lifting, and most of the population who wants a vaccine will be vaccinated by that point. And then hopefully we'll be able to move ahead from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other specific questions they'd like to ask Lisa? And sewer, I think we had a on that, but does anyone have any questions? I don't know if anyone from the Board of Ed is with us tonight.
Leslie on there somewhere.
Madam Chairwoman, we're going to bring them over as panelists so they're available.
Okay. Good evening, Mrs. Crotty.
Good evening. All of the board members are here. We're just being moved over to panelists, and the superintendent is available for any questions.
Okay. Basically, it would, I think, be helpful as we look at the Board of Ed budget as a whole, if you address to us what the big ticket items were going forward as one question, and the other maybe if your budget is cut, what kind of an impact are we going to see?
Thank you. Chairwoman Crotty, if I can certainly begin, and if you'd like to jump in there, and Mr. Mikowski as well, if you'd like to certainly go right ahead. Our largest portion of the budget this year, with our 4% increase, you'll see that the dollar amount is just around that $1,800,000 something odd dollars. $1,808,000 really is specifically just for special education costs. This is ultimately righting our ship and making sure that we are appropriately funding for the things that we are obligated to fund for all of our students in our district. In addition to that, in order to offset some of the other costs, in order to keep moving our programming forward, we found $817,000 in our current operating budget. It was a difficult task to do, but we either found savings or found other ways to become efficient so that we could add in things like the new high school special education program as our students graduate from the middle school up to the high school. That would take on 2 more special education teachers and a social worker. In addition, that would also bring back some of our students who are outplaced right now at some very, very expensive outplacements that can range anywhere from $60,000 to $200,000 per child. So by having that high school special education program in place, it really does start to properly and appropriately fund our special education costs. With that, we did sandwich in the human resource specialist that Mr. Ramo had alluded to, where we could split between the town and the schools, where they're really their specialty in personnel and training and all of that can really help mitigate some legal issues that can really arise for the town and also for the schools. In addition to that, we have other programming pieces for summer enrichment that really is in response to a large outcry from our parent population who are looking for not just remedial support, but really instructionally based academic and social emotionally engaged programming for students throughout the summer. And this is important because we're coming off a year of COVID where education has been interrupted. That is something that we can't, close an eye to. And so being able to put that programming in place in the summer is going to be super important to us. In addition, of course, we also have the 0.5 individual at the high school that we would like to put in place so that we can increase our offerings in manufacturing and trades programs. And that's just a start to that as we move forward. When I think about cutting, and I can certainly pause here and we can have dialogue, but when I think about cutting, it is a very lean budget. And I know you've probably heard that year after year. But as I mentioned, we already, knowing that it was a large increase this year of that 1,000,008 something, and so much of it dedicated to special education, and really only 53,000 of it dedicated to other programming, we found 817,000 already and reduced that. So to reduce more, to be totally honest, it takes us right to the bone there, and it impacts us immediately right away at the student level. So that's where we are at this point.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else is as confused as I am, but I have to ask, when you say you identified areas to cut, approximately $800,000, you're not saying you're reducing your request by $800,000. You're saying that reduction was made before you came to us.
That is correct.
Okay.
Or else.
The numbers being the same made it a little confusing, so I just wanted to clarify that.
That is correct.
Thank you. Mrs. Crotty, did you want to add anything?
Not at this time. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any questions for the board?
have a question.
Yes, Rachel.
Do we know any more about any money coming in from the new federal assistance bill or anything that could help with this?
Certainly. So we do have a number of grants that we have been given as a school district to work with over a number of years. One of those main grants was the ESSER 2. We had an ESSER 1 that came earlier on in a much smaller amount. The ESSER 2 is a fund, a grant that's basically meant to be used this year and next year. So we did use a portion of it in next year's budget to help offset that large 817 that we already reduced. So that's baked into next year's budget. Of course, everybody was waiting with bated breath for the American Relief Fund, and so we did receive money from that as well. However, simultaneously, as we move forward, we've come to see, and again, this comes back to our special education costs, that we are in a deficit this year. And so a large bulk of that American Relief Fund money will go to help offset our deficit this year. The other part of that American Relief Fund is that there are very strong guidelines on how we are to utilize that money over the next 3 years. So if only we could take the whole lump sum and just plug a hole here or say we're going to use it that way. They're giving us very stringent parameters on how we utilize that money, specifically for student learning loss. And we have to show data on how we're going to utilize that money, as well as stretching it out over 3 years. So with that, I'm trying to work the application as best as possible so we have more freedom with how we can utilize that money. But for some areas, it's just baked in a way that it has to be for certain items.
Yes, Jeff.
To piggyback along with that, would special education be included or not included in that, in those allocations from the fund? Meaning, is that part of what could be covered, or is that excluded from the?
Thankfully, special education is part of that. So seeing that a large portion of our deficit is due to special education costs, a large majority of that will be able to be covered by the American Relief Fund.
And do we know how much we've gotten at this point from that? What the actual payment has been?
So we have preliminary numbers at this time. So we are just around that $2 million mark. And so that should be coming out with firmed and confirmed numbers very shortly.
Okay, thank you. So we haven't received any of it yet, is that right?
Nothing has been dispersed. That is correct. And also I say preliminary because those are numbers that have been out and circulated. However, I have not received actual I usually get a letter from the state and from the government that has a final confirmation number to it. I have not received that at this time.
So it would certainly sound like you aren't going to have, you say you have to spread it out over 3 years. The current year, next year, and the year after, or 3 years going forward?
Current year, year after, and the year after that.
Okay.
Does this budget at all account for that money coming in?
It does not, no. But it does account for just a portion of the ESSER 2 funding that we are set to receive.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we need a general discussion since we've gone through the various departments and asked our questions. We have to make a decision on whether to go forward with the town manager's budget and the Board of Ed budget as it stands, or whether to make cuts.
I just wanted to start by kind of summarizing one of the papers that we handed out to the town council. This shows the last year's budget, the proposed budget, and the increases in dollar amounts as well as percentage. Under that, you'll also see that with these budget increases to both the town and Board of Ed as presented would increase the mill rate by 1.76 mils. So from 33.19 up to an estimated 34.95. Do the quick math on that, that ends up a tax increase on real estate, cars, other property of 5.3% tax increase for the budget as presented. My personal opinion, I wish it was a little lower than that. I always like the 2 to 3 range, so 5.3 is a little higher than what I would typically like. At the same time, we see
Where are you getting 5.3?
5.3% is your 1.76 divided by your current mill rate, which gets to the 5.3. We know there's definitely a need out there, even more so with COVID. At the same time, I understand businesses and individuals. There's been a rough year and probably an even rougher year to come. So a hefty size tax increase would be difficult for many. But so that's my opinion.
We also have the numbers, if the council is interested in cutting 1% from the town side. That would leave a mill rate of 1.26 mil increase. That's roughly $209 for an average home of 166,000. Obviously, there are homes that are more than that, which means the tax increase would be higher. It also means at the 1.26, it would be a $500,000 cut to the Board of Ed.
And just to clarify on that those calculations are based on a 1% decrease from the town's proposed budget, in addition to no new full-time positions, new positions.
No new positions at all.
And a $5,000 reduction in the Board of Ed budget.
500,000,
What did I say?
5,000.
Yes, 500,000, sorry.
Could you say that again, Jonathan? I'm sorry about
So
the,
on the town side,
yeah,
it's a 1% reduction and no new full-time positions. Now, new full-time position was the assistant superintendent for the public works.
Okay.
That was one that would be removed.
yeah.
That's bringing it down to 1.75.
No, that would bring it 126.
The increase in the mill rate would be 1.26,
1.26, okay.
which ends up roughly 3.8%.
I have a kind of thought about this here. What we could look at maybe doing is following the example of not hiring any new people for the town, so we can keep the town side budget and control. The question I gotta redirect it back to the superintendent as a clarification. So this relief money is supposedly coming in. Can we estimate what the annual amount would be? Based on the information that we have now. I know it's hypothetical at this point, but it's spread over 3 years. How much per year would that be towards your budget?
So I'm weary to give an estimate this evening because of the current deficit that we're running at the time, currently right now. If, again, I was talking about the application and if I can work that application in our favor to be able to put as much of that towards our deficit currently for FY21, that is really what the Board of Education and I are working to do. Knowing that probably not 100% will be able to be put towards that, I'm assuming that if I can be in bad choice of words, but I'll say dribs and drabs of it will be put towards next year, the following year, and then the year after that. But once I can finish up the application to see how much of that bulk I can put into this year's current deficit, then I would be able to give you a more considered dollar amount. I can't imagine, however, knowing how hard we are trying to cover this year's hole, that there would be much being put towards the following years.
Thank you. That's
Would-
what.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add something to that, if through the chair, if possible.
Sure.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I just want to mention that the money for next year that Dr. Villanueva talked about, there was about $464,000 of the ESSER 2 funding that's allocated already in the Board of Education budget for fiscal year 22. The new relief money that she's speaking of, that we're looking to help this year's deficit with, is supposed to be for those 3 years to cover the expenses that we're going to have related to COVID moving forward. So we know as a school district, we've already been informed that we will need PPE for next year. We will have additional social emotional consequences of COVID that we will have to pay for with students that might need more supports in academics, might need more supports in mental health, and many other things as a result of COVID. So that money is supposed to be used for everything from PPE to all of the learning gap issues and social emotional needs for the next 3 years. So we're looking at trying to use that money to help us cover the deficit we're currently in because of COVID. And then looking at, if we do that over the next 3 years, having zero funding for any COVID related expenses. And that's the truest picture I can give you. And Dr. V, please correct me if I'm wrong, or Rob, that's the truest picture I can give you of how that funding is working for us.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Or do we have a motion on how
Any feedback on
How do we determine cutting, whatever we're gonna cut, if we're gonna cut?
right?
We don't know how much money we're gonna get. I know she said she can break it up in 3 years. But how do we know?
What she just said, Lou, is
I
they have a
understand.
deficit this year, so the majority of the money is going to go to help offset that deficit for this year. There will be little to go for next year and the year after.
Well, yet we still don't know the dollar amount.
No, we don't.
So that's like,
It's somewhere, it's around $2 million mark, but it's gonna get gobbled up by this year's deficit.
Yeah.
So there's only probably maybe, if we're lucky, there'll be a couple $100,000 between the spread up over 2 more years. It's not gonna be enough. My hope was that if they force us to shove it into buckets, maybe we could, work way around it.
We may have to make an allocation at the end of this year from the general fund to balance their budget, because the money may not be here yet. And then when it comes, it goes back into the general fund again. But not knowing when it's going to arrive and the exact amount, we're going to have to rely on our finance director and the board's finance person at the end of, as we draw to the end of June, to give us the number of where they are. And hopefully by then the superintendent will have a letter and have some idea on what kind of funding is going to come in.
We hope it comes in high.
Obviously, yeah.
If I may, is that the $800,000 that Dr. Villanueva was talking about, that they found within the budget?
No, that's why I asked her that question. What she was saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Doctor, they found approximately $800,000 before they made up these figures.
Right. So I guess my question here is that, is there anything going on within the school department now to try to make up some of that $1.something million of the overage?
Well, that's what the 800,000 is that they've done.
If I may jump in, so because we're now talking about two fiscal years, we're talking about fiscal 21 and we're talking about fiscal 22. So currently for fiscal 21, the year that we're in right now, because we are in a deficit, and that deficit is running at one point now, and that number, can wiggle there. We were in an immediate budget freeze And from that as well, we froze any hiring of any type of new staff. We also, looked to cut contracts with providers from outside that may have been able to just stop providing us services. We are trying our best to capture every last cent this year for FY21. In addition to, if we need to get to the point where we need to talk to our unions and our bargaining units again, we certainly will do that. But at this point, knowing that the deficit is at 1.9 and potentially the preliminary number for the AR American Relief is around that $2 million mark, we are trying our best to, again, try to cover as much as we can this year, as long as we can work with the application parameters. For FY22, knowing that our special education increase was so immensely large at 1.8 million on its own, and knowing that we would also still need to push programming forward, because the school district is more than just keeping the lights on. It's about having programming move forward. We knew that we could not come to the town with an increase of 7%. That would just be astronomically insane. And so we went in and we found $817,000 by reducing and making those reductions already to bring it down to 4%, knowing that that 1.8 million was a bulk for special education and only $53,000 was left over. We need to find more money to be able to continue a proper school year next year. And that's where that $817,000 reduction is.
Madam Chair, if I may add to Dr. Villanueva.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Villanueva. What I'd like to add also is consider what the board has put forward as risk mitigation. If you look at special education historically, it continues to rise. And as we've shared in the past, special education is both a moral and a legal obligation. We as a district are required to take care of our students regardless of the needs. And so that's where the unanticipated costs come in. And so this budget represents as realistic as possible to present to the town of what we can expect at best to our knowledge for the next fiscal year, including all of the work that Dr. Villanueva and her team has done to look under every couch cushion, every rug for pennies and nickels to help keep the budget as streamlined as possible. And so, while no one wants increases in taxes, this proposal is mitigating the risk that next year, if special education costs continue to rise, we might be in the same situation again. So I just wanted to add those 2 cents for the council's consideration.
Thank you.
And through the chair again, if I can. So to follow up on that, you are talking about bringing special ed back into our community, correct?
That is a part of it. We have a number of students who are currently outplaced in other special education environments. And so in order to be able to bring students back into their home community is certainly one of our #1 goals, but we can't bring everybody back at the same time.
So as you're adding this department, does this also open up space for to go out to other communities if we have open space to charge them for special education? Just say, I don't know, just say a Woken. They send their children out also. Could we attract those individuals to come to Watertown and then Woken would pay us?
So I think I understand what your question is. If I don't answer it completely, please just let me know and I will try again. No, our program that we're opening up in the high school is ultimately for our graduating middle schoolers who are going up. And we have a couple of students who are our Watertown residents currently in an outplacement that we're looking to bring back to round out that high school program. When we get a student that may come from a different district, one, they would have to move, so they would no longer have a Wolcott address. They would need to now be a Watertown resident. So it's not that we're opening up a program to attract other people to earn a revenue in the district. It's to be able to provide the programming for our in-school and Watertown resident children.
Okay, so now I have one more follow-up to this. So now by creating this department, do you see where it could attract people from other town now to move into Watertown because we offer this service? And has anybody seen that in another school districts that started this type of program?
Sure. So this isn't, so I hate to say if I accidentally misled you to think this is a brand new program. This is a program that we've had in-house, but as our students have been aging and growing, it now needs to grow into the high school. And so as students have needs through their K-12 journey, we had the program start in the younger years, then it moved into the middle school years. And as students continued to become eligible, they could also become part of this program. Now the program continues to grow. So it was called Cub Den, then it became Rise, and then it was Wings, and now it's going to become Soar at the high school. So really what's happened is overall a natural chronological time frame here, we have ultimately offered now a K-12 program for a student who ultimately comes to our school in kindergarten and will graduate from us in 12th grade. Whereas before, we didn't necessarily have a robust enough program at all the levels for a student who was starting in kindergarten to move all the way up. So it's new, but it's not new. It's an expansion of what's already in here to round it out to be K-12.
Just going back to Rob's first question, as far as if we increase the size of our capabilities in our special education department, and would we be able to charge someone from outside town to come here? I know there was, I forgot what the name of the program was, but I knew there's a program we've had for the last couple of years, I believe at the high school, at the older level, where people from surrounding towns had the ability to come here. We would charge a certain amount and actually make money on providing those services. I think it was something over at the Seaman Company or something of that nature. So I didn't know if this could kind of fall in that same scenario where we could attract people from other towns, but also charge accordingly to help defer some of the costs.
Right. And so that program, I think when you mentioned Siemens, that would be the Watertown Transition Academy. And those are our students who are aged out of they haven't aged out of special education because that goes right up until 22 years of age. But they are our older students who are transitioning out of the K-12 realm and into the workforce. And so those students we can attract from various towns around, and that is tuition based. This SOAR program at the high school, however, is not one that's tuition based that would attract other students or purposefully attract other students to come to be part of it. It is different from the Transition Academy at Siemens.
Yeah, thank you.
Would it, Doctor, would it be accurate to say if we wanted to set it up to attract other students, that the cost would be even more because you'd have to have more staff than you currently have?
That is correct. And so if we were to create our, I'm just putting out there, our own special education environment and outplacement that other people could come to, we would be holden to every single obligation and regulation and compliance measure that we would need to follow, state and federal guidelines. It would be an astronomical expense. It would be its own business on its own. It's like when we send our students out to outplacements in other communities, because that is their outfit, that is their outplacement. As a school district, it is, I would not say physically possible or fiscally possible to do that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
I have I guess a question / comment. Dr. Villanueva, the idea of having this SOAR, I think you said is the next one for the high school. The idea is that it would save money in the end, correct? Because you wouldn't have to be sending these children to outplacement schools, which, as you mentioned, can be hugely expensive.
That is correct. So if we don't have SOAR at the high school, we have, I would say, roughly about 5 students or so that we would really have to question whether or not we can provide them these services. And if we come to PPT, which is the meeting that they have for special education teams to come together with the families, and it's determined that we can't provide those services without SOAR, then it is our obligation and our duty to find the best environment for them. And that would probably be an outplacement. And again, each outplacement for each child can range anywhere from $60,000 to $200,000. And also with SOAR going into the high school, we have a real opportunity, not only for the students who are graduating from the middle school upwards, but to bring back a couple of students who are currently in an outplacement that may be costing us quite a bit. And to bring them back and have a less amount of money. We anticipate that we have the potential of saving about $280,000 if we can bring some of those students back to the community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Beth?
No, I don't have a question, more of an observation, I suppose. Going along with what Robert said too, I think it's really important that when we look at this, keep in mind that I've got 2 kids in the school system. I know how important this every penny means to everything they do in that school system, and it's also a great investment for our town. But we have to make sure that what we're doing, as far as the money that's being spent, is being spent wisely, which it seems that they're doing everything they can to do that. What's happened here has been no fault of what they've done.
Right.
And I would think that the best course of action, this is my personal opinion, and obviously it's going to be up to a vote, but I would think if we kept the budget as proposed on the Board of Ed, and we do the 1% reduction proposal for the town, it sort of meets the problem in the middle a bit. It would reduce, instead of being 1.26 mils or 1.76 mils, it should be right in between. I didn't do the full math on it, but if you combine those two, we're talking $80,074,961, which is about a $400,000 difference. So this way, they have a chance to try it. And if we get enough money and there's ways to offset it from the plan, and there's something to throw some money towards it, it could help in the long run. But at the end of the day, we can't starve the school system. You know, if they've already gone down and tried to tear it down as much as they can. You know, I think it's important for us to be able to make sure they have the tools to be able to do this. And obviously, there's a lot of benefits to a good functioning school system. So that would be kind of a recommendation I'd make is to take that course of action.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
I mean, I just, I understand, I hear what everyone's saying, and I also, obviously, I sing the same tune, and that is for the people that, don't show up to these meetings and that lived on fixed income and people that lost their job. Our taxes are not necessarily low in Watertown as is. I mean, they're not extremely high. They're probably a little high for people, and it's a high expense state. And I think we need to just be mindful of that. There's a lot of people that are not voicing their opinions, but that are hurting out there. It was a really tough year. It's going to be another tough year for them. I really have reservations about raising that mill rate above 1 mils. I think I'd like to see it stay below 1 mil increase. But I recognize everything in all the departments, and I appreciate the departments and the Board of Ed, and I understand that that's necessary as well. So that's my position.
I think we'd all prefer to see no mill increase.
Yeah.
But, COVID has affected a lot of things, and it's, of course, it's affected our school systems too, not just budget-wise, but I've seen it firsthand, how it's affected the students, how it's affected the way that they can be taught in schools, and great difficulties, and to try to go back to normal as they're going through here. There's a lot of things that have happened with the school system in the last year that goes beyond just budgetary concerns, but the budgetary issues are the ones we're faced with right here and working on. I do think and believe that we really need to give them the tools to get back to normal. Everybody has been affected badly by COVID. Everybody has been affected either monetarily or emotionally or in their normal lifestyles or whatever it might be. But in order to give the tools we have necessary to get things back as normal as possible, there are sometimes difficult decisions
that we have to make, and that's why we're all in here, is to make this tough decision. It's not a decision any of us want to do, but it's one that I think that we're morally obligated.
Well, all I can say is I want to do what's right for the Board of Ed, no question. But I also want to do what's right for the taxpayer. I have to agree with Anthony to that level. And that's my opinion.
Chair, if I can too, so I agree with that, because here we're cutting out of a ladder truck that's 30 years old that they can't get parts for anymore. And if the motor breaks on the thing, then, you know, we've already cut that. We're cutting that public safety end of it. And I believe also what you said is that people are really hurting in this town. And I think that we need to show them that we're working on behalf of them.
Sue, could you tell us the figure? I know you gave it to me earlier, but I can't put my hand on it right now. If we don't make any cuts, what that would mean at that mill rate for the average home?
Okay, so if there's no cuts at all, and we're going with the town manager recommended budget, it would be the increase of 1.76 mils. The
Right,
mill rate would go up to the 34.95.
right. But the dollar amount that you had figured on the 166,000 average homeowner?
You're talking about, the $292 it would affect?
Yes, that's the number.
That's what it is. So, right, so if the budget was to stay the way it is, it would roughly affect everybody by $292. That's an average assessment of $166,000 home.
So roughly $300 if your home was only 166,000. If your home is double that.
Right,
then
but
you're-
that's assessed value.
Right. And obviously it's going to be different. It's $209 with a 1% cut.
And the cut to the Board of Ed also.
Right. Anything else?
I mean, I know we're talking about the taxpayers in the town, but those are adults. And I totally understand where they're hurting, but we're talking about children. And I don't know who has suffered more than children this year. I mean, I'm a teacher, I've seen it. And they have no choice in this. They can't vote. I just cannot support cutting any money out of the education budget whatsoever. I mean, if you divide $300 over 12 months, over 52 weeks, I mean, I know that can be hard, but we have to support our children. I don't see any way around it. And the teachers, what they've done this year, you know, if any of you have young children, I've had to work on Zoom, and my niece has been in Zoom and kindergarten all year. I don't know how a kindergarten teacher teaches kindergartners over Zoom. That's just really, really hard. So there's just no way I can support.
One of the things I have to remember is we go to public hearing from here. After the public hearing, that night we hold a town council meeting and we set the numbers that are going to go to referendum. So we don't necessarily need to make a cut tonight unless you want to. We can go with the full manager's recommendation and the school's recommendation to the hearing. Hear what people say. And if we still feel strongly that it's too high, that people can't afford it, then we can make that cut that night after the hearing and send a lower number to referendum. It's your call which way you think, whether you want to wait and see what the public has to say, but that could be a loaded problem, because if we have to have a virtual meeting, it's going to be very difficult for the public to communicate with us. And it will also put us in the position it did last year, where we have to vote, the public doesn't get it. So
It's always a hard call. You don't want to hurt education. You don't want to hurt
taxpayer.
Right, you don't want to hurt the taxpayers, and you don't want to hurt, certainly don't want to hurt public safety.
Well, and we have to remember senior citizens too. There's a lot of us,
Exactly.
there's a lot of us out there that are, living on the senior budget.
Well, that's exactly my point.
It's not, it's not just the young people that may have been out of work. It's some of us that live on social security that we've got to bear in mind that $300 is a lot more for them.
And we've also kicked the can down the road with the town highway department, not paving roads and not fixing stuff. And I believe that we need to make a cut.
We made no mill increase last year. So very obviously, some of those issues are now in the budget and have made it higher maybe than we wanted it to be. But that's what happens when you cut and cut year after year or have no increase. Sooner or later, the piper is standing there to be paid.
For sure. I'm just gonna throw a cheap shot in there and just say, I know we keep saying we're cutting, but our budget is growing. I just want to be clear that it's not that we're cutting.
Correct.
We are growing, our budget's getting larger. It's just we're cutting the town manager.
The request. The request, right.
Yes.
But I agree that that's.
Well, let's have a motion and Anthony, John can make a motion and we'll vote and see what the
Any
vote is.
other last minute comments before I make a motion?
No.
Good one. Good one.
Okay. Just check a number 2 before.
Richard, Jonathan, can you explain that 1.26 increase that you talked about before?
Okay, so that second page, what those numbers represent are on the town side, moving the new position that was going to be created for the assistant superintendent for the
Highway.
public works, yep. And a 1% overall decrease in the town manager's budget.
Recommendations.
So town manager, finance department, they'll go back and figure out exactly the best way to make that cut. In addition, on the Board of Ed side, those numbers would have included a reduction of $500,000. So instead of an increase of roughly 1.8, 1.9 million, the increase would only be 1.36. So the mill rate increase, with that being said, would be an increase of 1.26 mil, which is roughly a tax increase of 3.8 based on the numbers we received from the finance department.
Had, like I said, no increase last year. We were right around a mill the last time we passed a budget with an increase.
So based on discussion we've had, some people go with the cut, others no cut to the board. I just took those numbers instead of the cut to the Board of Ed of 500,000. I'm thinking to do a motion that will have that in half. So the reduction will only be 250 versus the 5,000. So in summary, the motion I'm going to do, like I mentioned, is no new full-time employees on the town side, plus a 1% reduction in what the town manager proposed. The total reduction would be roughly $400,000 from the town side. And with my adjusted numbers on the Board of Ed would be a reduction to their proposal by $250,000. So let me just finish the last of my math.
Again, that's only going, those numbers are only going to hearing.
Correct.
The numbers that are,
Well, it's going to a motion first.
yeah,
Yep.
but I mean, it's not numbers that Or the final number is going to referendum.
Okay, I move to set a,
So can I ask a question? Yep. So what is the percentage of the increase then? So we went from 5.3 to 3.8 to now.
somewhere in between.
3.8, right?
Yep, somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It'll be like 4.5-ish. It's gonna be just under 5. Well, the 9, sorry, the 7, 9. So it's about a third of a mil decrease is what it'll be. From the first 1.76. So somewhere in the 1.4, 1.5.
So almost 1.5.
Correct. Which equates to the tax increase would be where somewhere
4.2.
somewhere in the ball.
Jonathan, for the town amount, we're talking about a reduction, a change of.
The decrease is exactly the 404,395.
Okay, that's the increase of 1% reduction.
And remove the full-time employee. Yep.
And the pool and four would be 250.
Let me see that.
What does this look like if we don't do the, not that it looks like math and stuff. What does this look like if we do the, if we don't do the reduction of 250? What's the difference? It's not a comparison.
Probably around the 1.6. It's the $400,000 reduction is about $250,000. So maybe close to 1.5. Yep. So with that said, I move to set a budget public hearing on the proposed financial year 2021-2022 budgets to be held on April 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Watertown High School auditorium as otherwise virtual, while providing adequate time for public comment via email or mail. All information will be included on the town's website and in the public hearing notice for the following proposed budget. For the town general fund, there'll be $31,635,098. For the school general fund, $48,189,863. For a total general fund of $79,824,961. Town road aid, $349,009. Water operations, $1,791,755. Water capital, $170,000. Sewer operations, $1,862,905. Sewer capital, $175,000. Water and sewer debt, $309,600. Crestbrook Golf operations, $727,290. Local capital improvement, $153,041. Debt service fund, $359,628.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
We
So
need a
there's
second first.
I'll second it then.
Okay,
I'm sorry, is this the proposal of the 1% and the 500,000 or the 1%?
250, 250, 1%, no full-time, no new full-time, and the 250,000.
any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion that's taking 1% from the town side and $250,000 from the Board of Ed side, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the motion fails. So go back to,
More discussion.
I'm assuming, let me just poll the council so that I make sure what we do next. You're opposed because we cut the Board of Ed's.
That's not why.
Not
I just-
sufficient.
I just overall don't want to see more than a 1 mil increase. That's my opinion.
So no matter what our motion is, you're gonna vote against.
I think that we need to.
He wants to cut more.
I think that we just, I already expressed my opinion. You guys understand.
Cut more, cut less, cut less, cut less, I'm assuming.
I agree with Anthony, 100%.
Cut more.
Cut more, okay. So we're still stuck in the middle. Any
Well,
other-
no. The cut mores have more people supporting them than
Well, we got 2 and
the
2.
cut less.
Oh. Sorry.
Cut more.
Cut more, okay.
So you have to go back.
I'll go back to cut the Board of Ed of 500,000 then. I'm just gonna have to reread all that. I move to set a budget public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 budgets to be held on April 21st, 2021 at 7 PM in the Watertown High School auditorium as appropriate. Otherwise virtually, while providing adequate time for public comment via email or mail. All information will be included in the town's website and in the public hearing notice for the following proposed budget. Town General Fund, $31,635,098. School General Fund, $47,939,863 for a total general fund of $79,574,961. Town Road Aid, $349,009. Water Operations, $1,791,755. Water Capital, $170,000. Sewer Operations, $1,862,905. Sewer Capital, $175,000. Water and Sewer Debt, $309,600. Pressbrook Golf Operations, $727,000, $290. Local Capital Improvement, $153,041. Debt Service Fund, $359,628.
Do we have a motion to approve it?
You have a second?
I'm sorry, you're correct. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. This is a motion that is a 1% cut to the town side and a $500,000 cut to the Board of Ed.
Which ends up equating to roughly $404,000 cut to the town and 500 to the board.
And brings us to 3.8.
And that'll give us an increase in the mill rate of 1.26, estimated increase, I should say, an estimated increase in tax of 3.8%.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
1, 2.
I'll abstain.
The motion passes. 1 abstention. 2 opposed. Anything else on your motion sheet there?
Sure.
Motion to adjourn. Favor?
Aye.